Hello and welcome to Heavy Metal Rex. My name is Awais, and today I wanted to take time to show you guys 5 things I love about this car and 5 things I don't. I want to thank you to Monk WRX for actually giving me this suggestion because I don't really make a lot of videos like this because it's usually not the type of video I watch, but I thought it was actually a pretty good idea. Unfortunately, as you can tell by the thumbnail and versus where I'm sitting right now, I kind of messed up the intro again. For whatever reason, it corrupted that particular file, so I am in the basement remaking the intro anyway. Let's get to the footage, and I hope you guys enjoy. So some of the things I'm going to talk about today, you guys already know from other videos. You already know that I love this car and I love everything about it, but there are certain things on a day-to-day basis that I do find living with it can be difficult, and I think it's very important that you guys know. We'll start out with the things I do like, and it's pretty basic stuff, things that you've heard me say before, like I'm going to get the shape out of the way first. I know that it's controversial. I know that it causes a lot of people to cringe when they see the fender flares. I love the shape. I think that every single Subaru before this has had a very unique shape, and unique is the word I'm going to use because that's exactly what this is. I don't think there's ever been what one would consider a really pretty WRX or a really pretty STI. They've just been good enough for Subaru standard, and honestly, they're good enough for me. I love the way that the front lights look. I have no problem with the fender flares. I think actually, depending on the color, it really stands out. So I love that part about it. I think it looks very modern, it looks very edgy. If you sit this next to a VA, which I've done a few times, the VA kind of looks ancient now compared to this body shape. And I think what Subaru did, it was a good decision. Now again, subjective, and that's what I like about it. And a lot of people still, even though this engine is kicking ass, they got some trouble with the way that it looks. So wanted to get that one out of the way first. Next, I want to talk about the tires and the handling characteristics. And this is where the WRX has changed a lot. Ever since we moved over to the Subaru global platform, I've noticed that there's a lot of things that we wish the car used to be able to do, but couldn't. And that's some slight lift-off oversteer, which is something that I noticed when I was on my autocross weekend a couple of weekends ago. Everybody thinks that Subarus or WRXs, they cause a lot of understeer, but I think it's because a lot of people like to floor it when they're going around the corners and think that the all-wheel drive is really going to carry them. That's not really how cars work. You actually do need to load the front suspension with enough weight, which is why you brake and then turn into the corner. Now what this car does a little bit differently, and I'll tell you why, is if I'm in a corner and I'm lifting off the gas and I turn a little bit more, the back end does tend to slip out. Now this is characteristics of things like the old GTIs and even some of the newer GTIs and the Audi's S3s and A3s. And the reason they do that, and the reason why this car does it, is the front track is about an inch and a half wider than the rear track, and that causes the rear to jump out a little bit, which I think that is a really good characteristic to have. If you can plan and know that the car is going to do that, if you're on a track or you're doing autocross, or you're doing any sort of spirited driving, you know that that's something that's going to happen, and the car will correct, point in the direction you want, and go in that direction. And that's once you got the car rotated and you hit the gas, that's when you go, and that's when you get the minimum amount of understeer. So something that I love about this car, and I didn't know it even had, because if you go back and drive a VA, you're not going to find that. And the tires, more specifically, these particular tires are not the same tires that come on the VA WRX or the VA STI. I think the VA STI actually has Yokohama's, and the Dunlops is what comes stock on the VA WRXs, but those are just like the Sport Max GT. These are actually the GT600A. These are the same tires, and I've mentioned this before, that come on the STI S209. So if these tires are good enough for that car, which is designed specifically for handling and performance, you know, around the twisties and, you know, canyon driving, these tires are phenomenal. I know that the tread wear is a little bit low, but I'm up right now at 16,000 miles, and I still got maybe about halfway to go. I could probably put another 10 to 15,000 miles on it, and you guys seen in the videos how much these tires got pushed, especially the day when we went to autocross. I actually did end up doing another tire rotation when I came back because those front ones were looking a little on the rough side, but I still think they'll make it. So everything that you know about the stock Dunlops from the VA, forget about it. These tires are phenomenal. And if you see people selling them on Facebook Marketplace for $400 or whatever crazy price they're doing it, my suggestion to you, buy them. Because these are right now, I think like $480 if you try to go buy a tire. So selling them all for like 5,000 miles on it or even less for $400, that's a steal. Next, I want to talk about something that the main thing everybody talks about, and that's the engine. The FA24 DIT is an absolute power plant. Recently, Subaru did actually enter the 2023 WRX in the Nürburgring 24-hour challenge. And even though we didn't place first, and the reason wasn't the engine, it was actually the transmission that gave up well before the engine. They actually had an upgraded turbo on it. They had upgraded internals, but it was the stock block, making about 380 horsepower. Now, this car has been different powers for an extended period of time. We've been at 295, 300, 330. That's where it is right now. It's about 330 right now. It's even been on a moon tune about 400 when it had just the intake, which was hella aggressive. So we backed that down. But, I mean, even right now, with the turbo upgrade, people are making about 450, 460, upwards of 500 horsepower on a stock block. That is incredible. That is, I am so happy that Subaru did upgrade the engine. I know that people wanted to have the, you know, a refreshed EJ, but that probably just wasn't possible because it was a 30-year-old engine. You already saw that they were moving over to the FAs with the VA, the FA20, which is a very good engine. You got fuel economy and power all in one, and you're pretty much getting the same thing here. Fuel economy is down a little bit, but the power is definitely there. This engine is phenomenal. The stock tune is also very good, especially compared to the VA. And it's just, I can't say enough things about how good the engine is, and I continue to look forward to, and I'm constantly surprised at what tuners are doing with this engine, and hopefully I'll get there too. And you guys know my J-pipe still needs a little bit of work, which hopefully we're gonna get resolved this week, and I'll rejoin the 400 Elite very soon, don't you worry. Next I want to talk about exhaust sound. This is something that and again, very controversial because a lot of people love the unequal length header sound of the EJs, which is phenomenal. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. And then some people like the FA20. It had a slightly higher pitched, equal length whine to it. Some would call it a little bit on the ricey side, but I personally loved it because I had a 2021 WRX. And this sound is very different. It has a low, deep growl, but it can get a little bit loud in the higher pitch like the FA. It's like the perfect combination of both. And especially the way I have it set up, and my exhaust, I can't really use the word unique. It's not something that you can buy because it's what we built at home. It's an Invidia J-pipe with a cat on it. There is no resonator in the mid-pipe, and there's no mufflers. Oh, I'm sorry, no, there is a resonator in the mid-pipe, and there is no mufflers in the back, and that's an MAPerformance catback from a VA20, a VA WRX, which we cut up, mated these two parts together, and that's why my car sounds the way it does. You can do that. You would just have to buy some older parts. I wouldn't suggest it unless you're really strapped for cash. We're doing it just for science purposes, but it still gives this car a very unique sound that I'm actually a really big fan of. It's a little bit drony on the highway. It's probably because I could use maybe a little bit muffler, but it's a lot quieter than the VA. And it is equal length header, so we don't have like the Subi rumble that everybody refers to, but there is a very distinct and its own rumble, and I absolutely love it. Next, I want to talk about how the car is incredibly mod friendly. This is the reason why I think a lot of people are preferring to spend their money on this. I recently made that video about, you know, should you buy this or should you buy a Civic Si? The mod community has been killing it with this car. We've got multiple intakes, we got multiple intercoolers, top mount and front mount. You know, we have tons of J-pipe options, we have AOSs up the ass. There's everything that was available for the VA is now available for the VB. And I think that is a testament to our mod community wanting to build this platform. Even though everybody, when the first car first came out, kind of like wrote it off, you're starting to see more and more companies put the money, the R&D, and the research into this car, and they're coming up with some great parts. The intakes alone, this car breathes. When you get an intake on it, you get a front mount, you get even a top mount, this car does incredibly well. You throw a little bit of ethanol on it, the car loves it. It makes tons of power very easily. You know, if you're looking for a car around that $30,000 price range and you want to make a lot of power out of it for very little, it's either this or the GTI. I still got to do the video on the GTI. I think those are also in the same boat. You can make a lot of power on them for very little money, but this, compared to an old VA or especially an EJ, you can throw very little money at this and just, you know, go out for a weekend of fun and really enjoy yourself. So those are the 5 things I love about it. Now let's talk about 5 things I don't. So the things I don't like about it, these are super nitpicky, and I don't want to say that these are like make or break things about this car, but they're things that you do need to know about, and I'm going to try to be as objective about it as I can. Some of it it's going to be a little bit harder because it's going to depend on your body type. So, and the body type part, I'm talking about these seats. Now, the seats are a lot better than what came in the VA WRX, but they're nowhere near as good as the Limited. So this is actually a premium, and so it's got the cloth seats, They are adjustable 10, I don't think 10-way. They're a decent amount of adjustability, but the Premium does come with 10-way adjustable electronic with lumbar support. Now, as you get older, you're gonna need some things like that. You're gonna need some lumbar support, and this car does not have it. Now, even my old GTI had lumbar support. It was manual. It was just like a lever that I would pull down and something would pop out to have that. I can't imagine it costing that much money for them to put that in there, and I feel like that's something that they should have put. Again, this is something that's really going to depend on your body type and how these seats hug you. As you can tell, I'm about 6 foot. I'm a little on the petite side, and I feel like they bolster fairly good, especially in the lat area. It's got decent bolstering on the side. The lumbar support is the only thing that I really miss, and I hope that we get to the point where we can start transplanting some limited and some even premium Recaros into this car. That would be a really good upgrade over these seats. Next, I actually made a video about the infotainment system a couple of months ago, and a lot of people had trouble with it. You know, I understand that it is becoming, more and more cars are coming with touchscreens, and it's harder to accept that. And I know in the car community, change is a very difficult thing to accept. I don't particularly think it's that big of a deal. There are certain things I don't like. Obviously, if I want to change the recirculating of the air, that is a touch button. I don't really like that because if I'm driving, there's a couple of buttons I gotta push to do that. I'm glad that some of the temperature settings are physical. I have actually started using more of the touch control, the voice commands, and it's pretty easy. You know, I actually wanted to do a whole separate video about that because I think that a lot of people that have issues with the touch controls, you can just talk to the car. You know, I guess growing up, I always thought that the future was talking to cars, and yet now I can talk to it, and I literally never talked to this car. There are certain things that you can do that keeps you from touching the screen, changing your radio stations, you know, changing temperature, changing all that stuff like that you can do by just talking to your car, and I think that's a really good option. But still, I would have preferred certain things like recirculation and adjusting temperature quickly up and down, or even the heated seats. This is actually something that's just for the winter, but that was a really big deal because you do have to touch the temperature to get to the 3 settings for the heated seats, and that it is kind of a pain. If you're driving, that's not really something that you want to focus on, and unfortunately, that's not something that you can adjust with the voice commands. So if there's one suggestion that I can give to Subaru, which I'm sure they're watching this video, no, they're not, is try to put everything on a voice command, because at least we have the option of both. So that's something to think about. Newer cars are just going to start coming with these screens. I don't really think that we're going to be able to stop them from doing that. The speakers connected to the infotainment, the speakers are just trash. I don't know what else to say about them that hasn't already been said. Tons of people have done great speaker installation videos, like JDM Right Hand Drive, Flatline WRX. These guys have like really good suggestions for which speakers to put on them. I would really suggest watching those videos. I'm going to be watching one of them very soon because I do want to change the speakers. I love music, and the fact that I can't listen to music with my exhaust specifically, it kind of sucks. Even when I didn't have the exhaust, the speakers were, they weren't that great. Okay, now this one is something that if you throw enough money on it, it'll be okay. But if you're buying the car, you're keeping 100% stock, you need to know about it. The stock shifter is kind of bad. You can get an STI short throw shifter from the factory. It's marginally better. And after I bought, so I actually have it. I have the STI short throw shifter. It was about $380. I do not recommend it. After having it for this long, there are better options in the aftermarket than this one. It is a little bit notchier, but in my case, I ended up putting in the Perrin Super Shifter Stop, which if you watch my old video on it, it's very good. And it does make it much more bearable. I haven't changed any of the bushings. I haven't changed anything else, which I plan to do very soon because I want the shifter to feel a little bit better. But the stock shifter is very mushy. You will 100%, you will have to get a shifter stop. You will have to get some bushings. You're gonna have to do something to make it feel better, especially if you go drive a GTI or you drive a Civic Si and you come back and drive one of these, you will be very disappointed. This is a fact. Like no one will refute that. Honda makes fantastic shifters. Subaru, you know, they can shift. You know, they got gears. You know, and that's an issue. That's an issue pretty much across the board. I don't think there's anybody that sat down in a stock WRX anywhere and was like, "Wow, this is like the best shifter I've ever felt." Impossible. If they say it, they're lying. Don't listen to them ever. The last thing I want to talk about. This is something that bothers me, and it bothers me because there's certain parts about the body that I like, and I want to take the camera over and I want to show you these things. But let me talk about them real quick. There's 2 parts of this car that I found really weird when I bought it stock form. The stock wheels, which I got my snow tires on right now, and the stock grille. which I love the grill. I know a lot of people like the sport grill with the tiny holes. I actually much prefer this grill, but a lot of the body molding is black, but the grill and the stock wheels are gray for some reason. That makes no sense to me. And I didn't really notice that until one of my buddies, Jordan, he was on the channel. I saw his wheels, and the dealership actually painted them black for him before he bought them. And so I always thought mine were black until I went to go look at mine and they were gray. And it's a dark gray, but like it's a gray that stands out. And let me show you what I'm talking about the grill. So hopefully this video, hopefully I'm zoomed in enough to where you can actually see this whole molding is a very shimmery gray, or what would consider gunmetal gray, compared to the bottom parts, this plastic. Even the molding on the side is black. The molding on the inside of the hood scoop is black, and I don't really understand why they did that. I know that a lot of people like the sports grill. I don't like the sports grill because I like these bigger holes. Just visually, they look really cool. And the fact that this is not black really, really bothers me. And what I'll do is I'll actually show you, my stock wheels are actually at home, but I'll show you what those look like. And it's this same similar gunmetal gray, I guess you would say. No, you know, the GT actually comes with a very specific gunmetal gray. It's just like a dark, shimmery gray. But it makes no sense for everything else to be black and these to be this gray. And it's, like I said, it's super nitpicky, but when I saw it, it's all I could think about. And what I want to do is I'm waiting for the deep dish grill that Noble has, but I don't want it carbon fiber. I actually want it a gloss black, because I wanted to match this, or even if it's matte black, I wanted to be able to match the bottom of the bumper. And so that's what I'm waiting for, which is coming. It's coming very soon. I almost caved and bought the carbon fiber one, but I'm back in the same boat. I don't want a gray anywhere on the car. If I'm going to have a dark color, I want it to be black. So with those things, a lot of the things that I didn't like were a little bit nitpicky, but I think that there are things that you should know, and they shouldn't deter you from checking the car out, but there are things that you should keep in mind. And the things that I love about the car are actually like the things that I'd say majority of the people love about it, especially things like the engine. You can't deny that the FA24 is a monster car. It's a monster powerhouse of an engine. It makes tons of power. With a couple of things, this car could be a little bit better. You probably noticed I didn't mention the brakes. And the reason I didn't want to mention the brakes is because I feel like they're okay. They're not as bad as the old ones. So this is just like a neutral point. The brakes do fade, but I have really had to push them to make them fade compared to the VA brakes, which I was able to get them to fade very quickly. So something to think about. Most people will get aftermarket pads anyway and replace that, so it's not really that big of a deal, especially if 2024 comes out and that there might be a special edition with some Brembos on it, so something to think about. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope that it was informative, and I will see you in the next one.